Well, I have to say, right off the bat, this week's episode of Vikings, I actually really, really enjoyed. It might be my favorite episode of the season thus far. Granted, that's not really saying a whole lot since, including this one, there's only been 3 episodes, but this was the episode that I really thought planted the seeds of the whole seasonal narrative, in that not just in that they finally mentioned Paris and, introduced the idea, particularly in Lagatha's head, or specifically in Lagatha's head, of going to Paris, but also a lot of the conflicts I actually thought really started to come into perspective in this episode, as opposed to the previous 2 episodes where not so much, or at least not in comparison to this episode. So, in addition to that, I also really liked the character interactions and the numerous character moments in this one, more so than the previous 2 episodes. I actually thought this episode found a much better balance. Not only did this episode find a much better balance of, screen time between all of its main and supporting characters, but in addition, the way that they chose to develop these characters and the responses that these said characters had to each scenario and situation and new development, again, I thought was very natural and was very in character for a lot of them. Even some of the more negative responses to certain scenarios, like Floki. Floki was not exactly a happy camper in this episode, but again, given what we know about him, I very much understood his reaction to the events that befell the Northmen in this episode. So basically, the plot of this is that Ragnar and the other Vikings finally catch up to the Prince of Mercia, and they take him prisoner, except they lose a few guys, particularly Torstein, who I thought Torstein died in the previous episode, but no, he makes one last stand here, and that was actually a really good scene, his last stand. It wasn't the very slow motion Boromir type last stand. Of course, that's good too, but it was very visceral and very real in that he just kind of walks toward the English line with his shield up, one arm gone. He walks up and they shoot him with arrows. He blocks some of the arrows with his shield, but some of them get him in the leg. They shoot him more, and he finally goes down on his knees. They come over to him, and he kills one of them with the arrow, and then they finally just finish him off. So just the whole way that thing played out, it was actually very eerie in how, I hate to use this word, realistic it was, and how very visceral it was. So very impressive death scene for such a minor character. And now that I look back, the fact that they did sort of give him a little bit more development in the previous episode, I think definitely helped in really solidifying the impact that his last stand had. Now, in addition, on the other side, there is Lagatha and the other farmers, the other colonists, still maintaining relations with King Egbert. Egbert is still trying to win them over. And again, what I actually thought was done better in this episode than the previous episodes was the fact that each of the sides, Egbert's side and Lagatha's side, they each are cooperating with the other, mainly because they want something. Lagatha is playing Edward or Egbert like a violin. She's playing him. She's manipulating him, and at the same time, even though all of his advisors and followers are basically telling him, these Vikings, these Northmen and their pagan ways, they're just committing all sorts of sacrilege on our land. They're not treating you with respect. Why do you cooperate with them? And Egbert basically says, you have to see the bigger picture here. Because I am trying to win these guys over. They could be a powerful ally. And isn't that worth a little bit of insult down the line, especially given how helpful these guys could be down the line? And at the same time, I actually found that to be a really interesting parallel with Ragnar. And now that we've actually seen Ragnar and Egbert develop a little more since season 2 rolled around, we can actually see how alike they are. Athelstan basically, when he introduced King Egbert in the second season, he said, oh, Ragnar, he's like you. I've heard he's like you. So now we've actually gotten a chance to see that. And it's not like they're the exact same character, but they each have similar interests in that they want to protect their people. They're very sharp in their own rights. And at times their moves or their strategies do not always garner the esteem of their followers. And Ragnar is basically confronted by Floki. Floki basically tells Ragnar, Torstein and a bunch of our other comrades, they died on English soil under an English sky for a cause that they did not believe in, working with people who support Jesus Christ instead of our gods, the real gods. I mean, how could you do this? Just bring them here and have them fight for someone else. How could you do this? And Ragnar basically tells him, you and everyone else here, you chose to come along. And not only that, I am trying to prevent a conflict. I do not want to have to deal with these English guys if we are on different sides. So again, really interesting parallel with Egbert there. And a lot of the character interactions I really liked, and the action scenes, again, I liked. I thought they were well filmed. I thought the production values on the show continue to get better and better. The sets, the locations are just gorgeous. And the costumes are they look very practical. And when they are utilized in the action scenes, the costumes and the props, when they are utilized in the action scenes, they actually look like the type of weapons and armor that Vikings and or English soldiers would wear and would use. So really props to the authenticity on this show. There's Kevin Durand. Kevin Durand is now in this show as the Wanderer, and basically he comes to Kattegat when all the other warriors are gone. He comes there, and he basically gains the attention of Siggy, of Aslaug, and of Helga. Again, the three significant others of three of the main characters. And he basically says, I wander, I travel. Sometimes I sleep on a rock, sometimes I sleep on a straw bed. It just kind of depends where my path takes me. So in exchange for their hospitality, he basically regales them with stories of how he was like the god Thor, and he interacted with the Jotunheim, and he drank a big chunk of the ocean, blah blah blah. And really, the only one who is at all suspicious of this guy, or at least the only one who shows outward signs of suspicion, is Siggy, Jesselyn Gilsig's character, the smartest one at Kattegat right now, because she is, which would make sense because she is the most experienced of these three women as to how things typically play out in Kattegat, because she's seen her own husband killed by Ragnar, and not to mention Ragnar basically having to kill two other Viking kings to get to where he is now. So Siggy, in terms of experience, it would make sense that she would be suspicious of this guy. And the fact that the seer has no answers as to, what exactly is the deal with this guy, this Wanderer, Kevin Durand's character, she basically says, what if this guy is some kind of sorcerer or wizard? Because he shows up, he's able to calm these babies when their own mother is not able to calm them. We each saw him in a dream, and as soon as he shows up, the following morning, 2 boys are found dead, and the seer basically has no answers. So yeah, I am increasingly interested in what Kevin Durand is going to contribute to the show, both from a performance perspective and from a narrative perspective. So yeah, really enjoyed this one, and more excited than ever for the next episode. Really excited as to, how they're going to invade Paris. So yeah, like I always say, until next time.